Tēnā koutou, and thanks very much, Cheryl, for organising today, and lovely to see everyone. In my 5 minutes, I'll answer quickfire the 4 questions that Cheryl gave us. And I'm such a policy analyst, I love structure, so here I go. So the first question was, describe what is digital equity to you? Or to me, digital equity is an end state. It's about all New Zealanders being able to make the most of an increasingly digital world. And I tend to use the digital inclusion when I'm talking about the types of things that we need to get there. There's a lot of lingo out there, you know, digital divides, digital exclusion. It's all part of the whānau of language, I suppose, we're using. The second question was, what are the problems we're trying to solve? I think the problems or the barriers to achieving digital equity, they sit in a number of areas, but the one I want to talk about the most is accessibility. And there are quite a few issues to unpack when you think about accessibility. The first one is quality connectivity. And I want to offer just a little shout out to successive governments. You know, even when governments change, they've kept with the program, investing in ultra fast broadband, rural broadband, Ministry of Education during COVID, stepping up, you know, to try and get connections to folks. So I want to say awesome work, government there. But we reckon about another $1 billion is needed to finish this connectivity rollout in New Zealand, get to all the regions that aren't hooked up yet on fibre, and then to go back round again and improve the quality of the existing connections. Because the problem is, our expectations of how much internetness we have at home are increasing, you know, every year, every day. So we've got to go back and get better speeds and better resilience. So that's quality connectivity point. The second accessibility issue is one of affordability. Just because fiber's come down your street and Chorus has dug up your road doesn't mean your family can afford the plan or can afford enough data for the family. So there's something to be done with government and others to address that affordability question. The third accessibility issue is around devices. By this I mean laptops, computers, tablets. Not everyone can afford these. And even if you've got one computer in your home, that's probably not enough for the whole family to be doing all the things online that they need to do these days. And sometimes you hear folks go, oh, well, you know, got one of these smartphone things, you know, so you're connected to the internet. Well, you can't do everything on a phone, and not everybody's got one of those either. And that was an issue we saw with COVID contact tracing, for example. And then the fourth issue, this is my last one on accessibility, is actually about access needs. You know, so it's not just enough to say, here is a laptop. If it doesn't meet accessibility challenges, so for disabled New Zealanders, we are not addressing that accessibility question there. So those are the accessibility issues. And I think the other barriers are ones that Sue and Stuart have already mentioned around digital skills, motivation, confidence, and trust. And I haven't got time to cover those in my 5 minutes. The second question was, what is the current state of things for digital equity? And as Sue mentioned, the data isn't great, but there are a couple of little facts and figures that we can throw out there. So the census, backed up with some more recent research by Motu, suggests that 11% of our households are without internet access in the home. That's a lot of people in this day and age. The thing for me, the concern more is about who's in that 11%. And what we know from on various research different government departments have done is that those most likely not to have internet access at home are those on low incomes and benefits, folks in rural areas, people living in social housing, our older New Zealanders, people with disabilities, Māori, Pacifica communities. So it's a really unfair, inequitable distribution in that 11%. And a figure that really gets me going is 31% of social housing tenants aren't able to access the internet either at home or at work. So if you took, so that's obviously that's a funny question. If you took work out, those not able to access the internet at home will be way more than 31%. And that suggests to me social housing is a really good area to be looking at. And it's really awesome that Minister Farley announced intention to do some work in that area a couple of weeks ago. So cheers to Minister Farley. On the skills side, just one figure to share is OECD research suggests that 45% of New Zealanders only have very basic internet skills. So that shows there's a lot of room for improvement there. Okay, so the last question was, if there were no problems in 2 years' time, what would be ideal? I've kind of redefined this question a little bit to say, if I could have 3 things, what would they be? The first one is, I'd say I'd like to have fibre or high-speed alternatives available all around New Zealand. Doesn't matter where you live, you get good quality connectivity that allows you to do the things you need to do from home or work. But the reason I focus on home a lot in this talk has been COVID has really thrown into stark relief the real importance of being able to do things at home. That's become more of a policy issue, I think. My second wish would be government in 2 years would have stepped up on that affordability question. It would have done something through public housing, combination of that and building on the good work that Stuart's team have been doing on education. I think if you took those 2 areas, you'd be able to get affordable connectivity to a lot of vulnerable New Zealanders. That would be really awesome if that had happened in 2 years. And then the third thing on my wish list would be that government would have funded a digital inclusion network, which would be a bit like a commissioning agency, and it would be getting the funding to the community organisations who know best how to build digital capability in their communities. So rather than a whole lot of digital inclusion providers having to think, oh my goodness, which fund am I going to try and shove my criteria in over here, there and there, not having any security of funding, that there'd actually be a commissioning agent, a digital inclusion network, that its job would be to get the funding to the communities who need it. But, you know, digital equity isn't something that we can work on and then it will be solved. You know, the goalposts are going to continue to keep moving and there's always going to be something to do.